Thank you. Okay. So our story begins 2 days ago, and then 57 years ago, on July 20th, 1969, when a Canadian boy, 9-year-old at the time, was celebrating holiday in Ontario with his family in a summer cottage, real nice. And the whole neighborhood gathered together in one of the houses that had a television to join for this very interesting live event, the broadcast of real people landing on the moon. Must have been looking something like this. And together with about 500 million people, that's an estimation back then, they were witnessing this live event, and people in the room were applauding, and the adults were shaking hands as if they had accomplished this awesome work. And everybody was really happy that America had pulled it off.
I'm going to step off the limb. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Of course, after that, there was some doubt. Maybe this was staged and recorded before, but, well, that's another discussion, of course. So, after the live broadcast, Chris Hadfield and his family were walking back home, and, well, the moon was there on the sky, of course. And Chris was struck by the thought that at that exact moment, people were there, walking, working, talking, maybe laughing, and even sleeping. And from that moment on, he knew with absolute clarity that he wanted to become an astronaut, 9 years old. So I'm sure there are many more children who want to be an astronaut, but, well, he was very serious about it. This was what it must have been looking like. A couple of months ago, I was at the NCraft conference in Paris, and I was listening to Sandro Mancuso talking about the developer's career path. And he asked us to imagine who would be our role model. So imagining someone's career, we should think about maybe someone, well, who we would want to be or want to be like. Well, who could be your role model? And we also had to imagine how that person would have got there at that point in his career, what that is so inspiring to us. And, well, sort of think about what would have been the steps leading toward that point in their career. Well, if someone asks me to imagine or to think of a role model, then, well, I just like to run away screaming because I don't like that idea at all. I was reminded of a friend of mine who used to have Thom Yorke as his role model, or somewhat of a hero. Who knows Thom Yorke, by the way? Okay, not so many people. He's the front guy of the band Radiohead. You know Radiohead? Okay, that's good, that's good. But even still, I didn't like the idea of putting someone on a pedestal and say only nice things about him, and in particular about Thom Yorke, whose music, well, it's great, but it's not really the best ever, I guess, I hope. Yeah, and at the end of the day, every one of us is still a miserably failing human being, so to say. So I don't think it's ever a good idea to make someone, or to turn someone into a hero. Nevertheless, this speaker, Sandro Mancuso, he made me think again about role models and maybe, well, look into my past. Who do I admire, right? Or did I admire? Uncle Bob. I'm sure you know him. Maybe philosopher Immanuel Kant. Mark Oliver Everett, frontman of the Eels. And of course, Minecraft Steve. Who knows him? Either no one or everyone, I'm not sure. And then I was reminded of the book I had just read, which is this book, An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth, written by Chris Hadfield. And I thought that for a minute, or maybe for a couple of weeks, well, Chris Hadfield would be a nice role model for me. So I assumed it would be a good choice for now. Looking at his career and his decision to want to become an astronaut at 9 years old, it's really interesting because the chances are really, really slim that you will actually end up being an astronaut. And first, in the case of Chris Hadfield, because the simple fact that he was a Canadian, and at the time, NASA was only recruiting Americans and only sending Americans into space. But then also, the career path is pretty narrow. So you have to do so many things to become an astronaut, and you also have to be a very smart person, very hardworking person, and you have to know all about engineering. You have to be a very excellent pilot, like a fighter pilot, and then maybe at some point in your career also a test pilot, trying to see where, at what point a plane becomes a dangerous thing. You know, so all the new planes, you test them and see, and you basically start writing the user manual for it. So that must be a scary job, and also a reason why many people die in that profession. So chances are that you won't even get there. And then also your body has to be in excellent condition. There should be nothing wrong with you in any medical aspect, because if you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to be put on a spacecraft and sent to space, and then in space you suddenly get some health problem, well, you have to abort the entire mission and fly back to Earth. That would be just a shame, of course. So you have to be in perfect condition for that. But because of all those rules or the narrow path towards getting or becoming an astronaut, Chris knew that it was probably not going to happen. So he had to have some idea about how to cope with that. And that this was his idea. So even as a 9-year-old boy, ambitious as he was very much aware of every point in his life where he had some choice in things. And so he was aware that every one of his decisions really mattered, and that taking the right decisions, he might as well end up being an astronaut. But there are also, of course, many other paths in life, or possible paths in life. And he decided that whenever he had some option, he had to pick the one that brought him a little bit closer to his goal, and not the option that led him from his goal. Saying, well, I should do always things that keep me moving in the right direction. And he also had this very smart sort of sub-clause saying that wherever he was on that path, he wanted to be happy. So it shouldn't be about that final goal or maybe that final job title. It should also be about getting there. And at any point in life, you should be happy to be where you are. There's an interesting idea, if you turn it upside down, that's lying behind this. That is that every one of us, being where we are right now, that is just an effect of previous causes, so previous moments in our life, previous decisions that we make. And, well, I'm not saying that you have full control over your destiny, of course. Well, let's not get into that, but leave it to the philosophers. But still, that there are so many ways that you can still influence your course in life. And so, yeah, whenever you're faced with some decision, choose wisely. When it comes to your health or the way that you spend your day, the amount of television that you watch or the amount of books that you read, things like that, everything just gets you either closer or farther away from the goal. So besides making the right decisions, you have to be continuously working on yourself, improving yourself. And that means you also have to be very much open to feedback. You should never take your current position for granted at no point whatsoever. And you should always be asking for feedback as well. Because if you are, like maybe you are currently someone like that, if you are a senior in your team, you are likely to be the one giving feedback to other people, and, well, it's exactly needed the most at that point, for you to ask from other people, some criticism, some feedback, ways to improve yourself. And during the astronaut training, you don't have to ask for feedback, basically, because everybody will be feedbacking you all the time. There's so much to tell you about the things that you may be doing wrong. Well, sort of a nice view on this would be that whenever something goes wrong, maybe you make a mistake, or maybe something doesn't work like it was supposed to work, then a whole team of people looks into it and tries to analyze what has been going wrong, and what should be the standard solution for this, the fix, so to say. And so this is happening all the time in astronaut training. Something goes wrong, and we write down a solution. And this combined gives you a whole body of solutions, or some sort of a knowledge base called the flight rules. And they are always used. So whenever something goes wrong in space, in the spacecraft, for example, then ground control looks up this particular situation, sees if there is a standard solution, and then you have to follow that solution, that guidance. And this prevents you from taking unnecessary risks while in space. For example, if you're ready to launch with your spacecraft, and you have been working towards that moment for years in advance, and then it turns out that one of the fuel cells for your engine, it's broken. Well, we look into the flight rules, and it says, abort the mission. But you, while you're in the spacecraft, you say, wow, no, we shouldn't abort this mission. We have been preparing for this a lot, and we have a backup fuel cell, right? So we should still go. We should still go. And no, but the flight rules say no, and yes, the mission is absolutely going to be aborted, because we always follow the flight rules. Well, why? Because there has been some accident in the past which caused major trouble, and which also caused the rule to be written down. So that is why you trust the flight rules. So always being the best at school, and always passing to the next round, and being selected for these special groups of people, finally being selected to go to space, all of that is really good for your ego, of course. Still, you have to let go of ego constantly, because, well, if you start feeling big in a team, then be aware of the fact that you may be senior in one very particular area, but junior in very different areas. So, yes, get back to your positions there. And also, you should forget all about competition. For example, if one of your team is being selected to go to space, like probably not all of the trainees are going to space in the end, but then one of them is. So, and he takes off. And you think, well, that should have been me, right? But still, this is something where you should feel that the teamwork is the most important thing. This is not about individual achievements. This is about the team getting into space and preparing in a very good way for that. And so the decision to put this particular person in space, that is a very rational, very good decision, and you should be happy about it. Well, of course, you should may feel a little bit sad about it, but then immediately be aware that this is for the group, for the team. And in case of an emergency, it's also very good if you don't feel like competitors, but like friends. If you're in the spacecraft or in the International Space Station, high up in the air, you want to be friends, so that if something goes really wrong, you're not still fighting each other for the best place. And, well, whenever something goes wrong, which is likely, somehow in space, many more things go wrong than could have been anticipated, you still have to work the problem. So don't get emotional about anything up there, not even a fire, which is very dangerous, of course, because the fire behaves in very unpredictable ways. But simply work the problem. You follow the checklist, you follow the rules, and you also follow this three-step plan to first alert any of the team members who may not be aware of the problem yet, then to get together and decide upon the course of action, and then finally to just work the problem, do whatever is necessary to to fix what is going on. Like I said, don't respond emotionally. It doesn't help anything if you're just running around screaming or crying even. You should be working towards fixing the problem, and that is your goal. But in fact, many of the situations, the problematic situations in space, you should already know about them. So you should know what could happen up there. And that is, well, that only works if you take everything absolutely very seriously. So you practice everything again and again, and you think about everything that might happen. You also discuss what your roles are going to be. So what kinds of things are each of the team members going to monitor, and which actions are everybody going to take. So yeah, you have to know what it's like to fly the Soyuz capsule, what it's like to do a spacewalk. You have to practice in the swimming pool to get sort of a feeling of how that would work. And you also have to practice peeing in space, of course, because that is a complicated thing as well. Well, I like to take my work very seriously, and I absolutely hate it when someone comes to me and says, you're not working for NASA, so just make this thing work, right? And I feel that as a professional community, we could sometimes pretend a little bit more that we're working for NASA and taking our work a little bit more seriously, not just us, but also our managers and our customers. So that is something, that is my vision in life, to fight for that everybody knows how important software development really is, and what comes with it in terms of discipline and rules and well, principles. So someone, well, she didn't work at NASA, but for NASA, and she really took her job, of course, very seriously. Who knows this picture, by the way? Right? Oh, quite a few. Good. So this is Margaret Hamilton. She was programming leader at MIT, and she worked on with her team on the software on the Apollo 11 for landing and navigating. In fact, for the first moon landing. So that is very relevant to this story. And well, as I like to say, test your software, of course, in an automatic fashion. That couldn't be done in this case. So this was all manually tested, and it was a lot of work. And well, coincidentally, the code has been published, I think, a few weeks ago on GitHub. Maybe you saw this already. To me, it's completely not understandable at all. Just those statements, I have no idea. It seems to be a custom sort of assembly language, so it makes sense that I don't get it. But the comments are still very interesting, and it shows us that developers then are more or less the same than developers now, as developers now. The code itself, from the printed pages, had to be read and transformed into punch cards, fed into a machine to see if it was running properly. But then that the running wasn't like testing, so it had to be physically wired into memory using copper wire and sort of magnetic rings. And then, only then, could you really test what you had written. So it seems like a lot of work to me. But, well, it worked. There were some problems when it was used, but, well, it brought the people to the moon. So that's pretty awesome, right? So after being a fighter pilot, a test pilot, doing a lot of extra work, helping crews from the ground, doing the mission control stuff, yeah, all those years of hard work, Chris Hadfield finally got to make some space trips, and he did so with the space shuttle as well as the Soyuz capsule. The space shuttle is now not used anymore. And this is a picture of right before his first or his last flight, in fact, to the International Space Station in 2012. This is the railroad that is leading towards the launch pad, and people are inspecting it so that nothing goes wrong when finally this train passes along it, carrying the rocket and the Soyuz. So that's really nice. This is quite impressive. Once installed, put upside, it's filled with fuel. And as Chris puts it, It's a 4.5 megaton bomb loaded with explosive fuel, which is why everybody is driving away from it. But then, while everybody is getting out of the way, of course, the crew is actually strapped on top of that bomb. And, well, they are Chris Hadfield, Tom Marsburn, and Roman Romanenko. They are the replacement crew for the ISS in 2012. So there are 6 people up there, and 3 of them get exchanged. At this point, another astronaut rule kicks in. That is to always come prepared. You cannot just show up, sit down in that Soyuz, or lie down, basically. So you, adopt the appropriate posture, and you assume that things will work out well. That is just not possible with spaceflight. Because at any point in time, things can go well in 1 or 2 ways. That might be okay. But then there are so many other ways in which things can go horribly wrong. And you shouldn't simply assume that you will always travel the happy path. So just like we do as programmers, of course. We don't always assume the happy path. In fact, we are worrying a lot about the unhappy path. So finding out, we'll find it out when we get there. That is something that may work if you're looking for some spontaneous person to fall in love with, and maybe decide to travel to Paris tonight. I don't know. But if you're going to space, that's completely impossible. You can't just go back to buy something or to take something that you forgot, and you cannot just take a language course while you're there. Oh, you have to always do this beforehand. So you have to always come prepared, and always consider the most unfortunate cases. In many situations, this is dynamic life, as they call it, with lots of variables going on. You have to make decisions within a couple of seconds, otherwise you might explode, or, can't imagine anything worse than that. But so you have to prevent these things from happening. There they are. In the case of Chris and his crew, everything went well, and they were actually traveling toward the International Space Station. And usually this journey takes a couple of hours, but in their case they took days or 2 days to do so, because, of course, the launch is a very, very heavy thing to endure. And after you arrive, there are so many things you are going to do there at the space station. So it's really good to take a little rest and to get used to this life in space. And then there it is. It's a very impressive thing. It's about 100 by 70 meters, which is an entire football field, really. It's there, 350 kilometers from the Earth, from the Earth's ground. It's a collaboration between several countries: United States and Europe, Japan, Canada, and you can see this if you look at a map of the space station. There are different parts of the station that have been created, assembled, and added by different countries. So it's really a very interesting collaborative project in space. So people are there for 15 years already, and it has been growing for 17 years now. And in those years, of course, constantly things had to be sent to it. Stuff to use at the station, food to consume. And this has been done for a while now by SpaceX, which is one of the companies of Elon Musk. They have billion-dollar contracts with NASA, and it's just pretty impressive what they are doing. They are resupplying the International Space Station with this rocket, but then it's only the top part that delivers stuff to the station, and then the lower part just lands back on Earth, or not even on Earth, on a ship. So that is pretty impressive. And this makes spaceflight a lot cheaper, and this is, I think, the future of space flights. Yeah, getting back and sort of preparing the thing again to fly back in space. That's really awesome. So these people are there, finally arrived. This is a crew of 6, like I said. It's just an amazing thing. They are living off the planet there, just working hard, of course, but also living, getting together, eating, drinking, not taking any showers. That would be impossible, of course. This is what it sounds like, being there. Doesn't seem like a nice thing to be in all day. Anyway, when you enter this International Space Station, you have to be very much aware that a group of people has been working there for quite a long time, several months, in fact. They know exactly what they're doing and what life is like on the space station. And this is general advice for whenever you're joining a group, or maybe you're switching jobs and you're getting acquainted with a new team. Even though you might be a very good person, like having lots of experience, lots of knowledge, you shouldn't just dive in and act like you're the important person and say, "Oh no, we should do things differently here, and let's do it like that," which would be aiming to be a one, of course, to stand out in a positive manner. In case of the space station, once you get there, there are many things going on that you're not aware of. For example, scientific experiments with all kinds of bottles and stuff going on. If you're still getting used to the zero gravity and floating around in sort of unpredictable ways, then you should be very careful not to break anything. And yeah, so it's a good idea to try to be neutral at that point, to aim to be a zero, in fact. Have a neutral impact, just take on some minor tasks, maybe even the boring tasks, and then after some time you will see what's going on and you will understand what they are actually trying to achieve there, and then you can bring in your skills and special expertise. Because most of the time, if you enter a new group, you're going to participate and aim to be a one, then you're likely going to end up being a -1, having an absolutely negative impact on the group. I mentioned scientific experiments already, and this is really what the space station is for. And they are constantly running experiments, mainly because for a human being, living in space for a longer time is really dangerous. It's really bad for the body. Because of the zero gravity, the whole blood flow is different. The heart gets sort of lazy, so if you get back to Earth, the blood mostly doesn't, reach your head in the same fashion as it used to before. So people are always dizzy and getting used to getting back on Earth. But there's also problems with muscles, of course. So in space, with weightlessness, you can move very large, heavy objects. That's not a problem with less energy than on Earth. And your bones, they start shedding calcium. So that's really bad for you. And that means that once you live in space, if you would be there for a long time, you wouldn't be able to get back to Earth, or you would just fall to the ground and not be able to do anything. Also, people in space are constantly having sort of a cold because of the fluids that don't fall down, but just sort of stay in your eyes and nose. And the radiation, of course. So our atmosphere protects us from a lot of radiation from space, but of course in the space station, you get everything of it. It's not really sure what's the effect of this, but it is something that they are working on, trying to investigate what happens. And for humanity, of course, some people want to travel a long way into space. So people sending off to Mars, for example. But then the International Space Station gives us some interesting information about how to accomplish that and how to get those people, in a good shape to that planet. So yeah, the ISS is sort of a springboard for that. Part of the astronaut's job is also to talk to the people on Earth and show what's going on there. So Chris has been filming lots of everyday stuff, like clipping nails and drinking water, crying. I don't know how many times they cry, but what happens when you cry? The water stays in your eye, and you get these bowls of water. So this is pretty interesting to look at, well, if you have some time at some point. And Chris, being a singer and a guitar player, he also liked to play music in space in the ISS. And like, for example, this thing which he recorded, which is a cover of Space Oddity, you know it? Who knows this? Ah, okay. Good, good. You will have the opportunity to watch the video in a while. In fact, he had been recording several songs with artists on Earth, well, with kids around the world. But he also wanted to create this first ever music video in space. And he did so one day before he left back to Earth. Because, well, after 5 months, time has come to leave the station and fly back to Earth. So, well, what do? You hop into your Soyuz Reentry capsule, and that thing pushes itself from the station. Then it floats around the station to make pictures of the outer side of the station, see whatever kind of collisions have been happening, and if there are any parts being damaged. And then, well, you just gradually get back into the atmosphere, and the atmosphere slows the thing down, and then finally, well, it takes some time, and the thing will become very hot. You will get back to the surface, of course, and then some parachutes will make sure that you fall, well, in a nice fashion. Still, many things can go wrong. So even if it feels like you're just well, falling back to the Earth, well, the shields may break. So then, in that case, you will have a big problem with the heat. You will not survive that. The parachutes may not work, and you just fall way too hard on the surface and not survive it. Things have been going wrong with this many times in the past, or several times in the past. But luckily for Chris and his crew, things worked very well. The first thing that they said when they opened the hatch was, "Well, Chris, your music video, it has had 7 million views over the last 24 hours. So congratulations with that." Well, after being landed, I mean. The rule for astronauts is they have this 1 day in space, then you have to have a day to recover. So if you have been in space for 5 months, at least you should take 5 months, half year, maybe a year, to recover from that. So that's what you could call climbing down the ladder. And if all you like about being an astronaut is being in space, then you won't be happy most of the time. There is so much to do on the ground as well. You have to do all these debriefing, evaluation sessions. You have to do TED Talks, which is quite nice, and you can look it up. It's a great talk. You have to be at the ground, helping the crews up there with whatever problem they may encounter. And yes, of course, you also have to give some advice to people practicing to go to space, because you have been there, and you know what it's like. And then there's also the human aspect to being an astronaut. Also, if you have been to space, if you get back on the ground, you are, in this case, physically supporting other people who have been to space. In this case, astronaut Piper, who had this exact problem with the heart or the blood flow, where she almost fainted on stage during a press conference, and there's Chris helping her to overcome this situation. This is what I really like about this stuff, that it's not really all about getting into space. It's also about being a useful person on the ground. Like if a crew is leaving to go to space, then other people who have been into space already are appointed to help the family of those people who are flying. They just do some very simple stuff like picking people up from the airport, or make sure they have good food, or they have a good time in general. Because, well, that way you know what it's like to leave behind friends and family. So, coming full circle on this thing, we started out with who's your role model, whose career do you admire, who's your hero maybe. And in my, well, quest to find a role model, I had also been looking at my past role models. One of them, in Dutch, you would call him Kuifje. I'm sure in other languages he's called Tintin. Who knows this? Yes? Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. He was like a very big hero to me, because it seems that he always knows what to do, exactly what to do. He also sees through the enemy's plans, and he travels into interesting countries, sometimes countries that don't exist, and he also seems to know many languages, just like Indiana Jones, by the way. But there was some problem with Kuifje or Tintin, that after, well, some time, it appeared that some of his books are quite racist. So in a way, that is sort of throwing a shadow over this heroism from my youth. So then there is this other hero, which is Floris, from a Dutch television series based on a real historic character. It was first broadcasted in 1969, by the way, the same year as the moon landing itself, and then rebroadcasted in 1989 when it was videotaped, and then a year later I got to see this video when I think I was 5 or 6, which might have been a little bit too early because it was quite violent, even though at that time nobody's blood or intestines were flowing around. So it was all kind of a friendly television. And then this was actually one of the first public works of Paul Verhoeven, which you may know, the famous director on this picture. So my next role model, maybe more like a role model instead of a hero, would be Willem Vos. And he's a Dutch guy basically building small wooden ships. But now he had this great idea, this very big project, and that was to reconstruct a 17th century sail ship. And, well, that was, of course, created originally by the Eastern India Trading Company. But he was going to rebuild the thing in 1985. It took 10 years. So it was a lot of work. But the good thing about this project was, besides that it's very interesting to learn everything about, which I did, was that he was recruiting all kinds of people who had been sort of having trouble getting a job because of psychological problems or maybe being addicted in some way. And he helped them learn a job, like building a ship, and in that way sort of reintegrating into the job market. So it was really a very idealistic project, besides being a very interesting one. And I was always going there, taking pictures and looking for how did they do this thing, how do they build this thing. And he actually pulled it off. In 10 years it was finished, and the ship was launched in a much different way than a spacecraft is launched. But anyway, and for me it was very interesting that when the ship was launched, he kissed our queen back then. And that was something like totally against protocol. It was not something that you do, but he still did it. So that was impressive to me. What's also impressive is this ship. Once created, it has been sailing for several times now, but not too often. But I'm still a little bit in love with this thing. But just like with Tintin, there is a problem, of course, here as well. Some historic issues where the Batavia itself, the ship, but also the East India Trading Company. So many issues there in terms of well, killing and general bad practices, I would say. So a better alternative came along in 2014 when we got to meet Emmett. You know him? Yes, from the Lego movie, of course. It must have been very awesome to work on the movie, but also to watch it. And in fact, I've watched it many times, so I really like that. So it may be a good time to consider this question for yourself. Who might be your role model, in fact? Who might be someone whose career you admire, or whose steps or actions, deeds in life you admire? Maybe not something that you have to do right now, but maybe tomorrow, or maybe during some break, or while drinking that excellent beer that was just announced. And then think about what might have brought that person where they are right now, sort of unraveling all the steps that took him where or her where they wanted to be. And then you might slowly start to consider, if you really like to be there as well, take those small steps as well. And at least not let you distract yourself from that dream or that ambition. And even though it is pretty ambitious sometimes, there are ways in which you can get closer to your goal. Not be distracted, not taking the steps that lead you away from that goal, not starting a job that doesn't bring you any farther on that path. And you can start with that today, tomorrow. But as Chris tells us to do, so even if I won't reach that overambitious goal, always be aware that this is my job, currently, the job that I'm doing now. This is what I do, and I am happy about it. I think that is a good idea to keep in mind at all times. Don't allow yourself to take the steps that feel like really worthless because you think you will get somewhere where you want to be. Make sure that where you are currently now, what you're doing, that you are happy about that. So, who would like to watch Chris Hadfield's music video recorded in space by Space Oddity? Right, of course you want. So, there we go. Thank you, that's it.